Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. You know, I've had an opportunity to talk to a whole bunch of audiences over my career, and this is probably the scariest one for me, given that I have two daughters, and they're 14 and 16, and I'm seeing their faces here and shivering what they would be thinking about when I was talking. So it's a pleasure to speak with you today. I'm actually going to show you some stuff, and let me get rid of this Microsoft thing. And I'm also going to show you some applications. And as you know, when you try to show something live, it almost never works. So your expectation should be that it's not going to work. If it does, then you can clap. So just to set that straight. So what I'm going to talk about, and Dave's kind of talk just before this was a great setup. IBM is a great partner of Streetline. They resell our solutions. Is this whole concept of can cities talk? Right? Can cities provide you information that you can use? So he threw out some statistics, and I think that's very true. There's now, for the first time in human history, more people living in cities than ever before. And that is going to continue to happen, not just in the United States, but you can see Shanghai and Dubai and Bombay and so on and so forth. Just a huge number of people going into these cities. Now, in most cases, on one hand, you know, the cities have evolved. In Chicago and New York, the buildings tend to go upwards, but the congestion and the activity, in some ways, these cities haven't changed. They have not been prepared for the number of cars on the road. And especially if you go into Europe, how many of you been to anywhere in Europe? Any cities there? Okay. Small streets, small cars, these were not environments that were designed for traffic and designed for all the things that we can do together. And so there has been this kind of evolution of the cities that now have become really the epicenter of human activity. And that creates a lot of interesting challenges. Now, the topic that we're going to kind of focus in on is can cities talk? And we're going to take kind of one aspect of that, which is around, believe it or not, yes, parking. Now, what do I mean by can cities talk? Do any of you think a city can talk? How can, any ideas? How can a city talk? How can a city talk? No? Okay. So a city has information. Okay. A street light goes out. A street lamp can tell the city, I'm off. Okay. There needs to be a sensor in there. That sensor can go through information, and the city can tell you, I'm off. There can be too much noise in a certain area. There can be sensors, again, that detect that noise level, and there needs to be some communication mechanism that gets that information out. Okay? There can be a break in a water pipe, and you have to call somebody ways to get it done, but what if you see there's sensors in that water main that sense that there's a possibility that that may break, and therefore it gives that information to the city or to the homeowner and so on. So there's this whole topic. This is probably one of the most, I live in the Palo Alto area near San Francisco and in Silicon Valley, and this is one of the most interesting things that's happening in technology today, is this whole topic of the Internet of Things. Okay? And this is where you're starting to put software inside physical objects. And those physical objects then detect the activity that they're doing and provide you that information back and connect it to the internet. So when you start thinking about the Internet of Things and smart cities, when people talk about this smart city concept, the only way to make a city smarter, honestly, is to get new types of data and information from that city that wasn't possible before. So the part that we're going to focus in on is parking. Now, everybody has historically looked at this issue of traffic, right? It takes you 14.2 minutes to get from point A to point B. Fantastic. And we're going to put in a lot of engineers and PhDs and really smart people, and we're going to figure out it's not 14.2 minutes, it's 13.9 minutes. Now, point B could be outside this building. That's not your real destination. Your real destination is point C when you've parked your car, right? Has anybody ever had a problem finding a parking spot? Okay, you're all potential customers of Streetline. Thank you very much. That's great. So it's that second piece of the puzzle that nobody looked at until Streetline came about. Up to 30% of the traffic in a city is caused by people looking for parking. Okay? And you can look at it in terms of your own life as well. Driving along, and you know, you're in the car, you make it, do I take a left, do I take a right, do I go straight? and you have an argument, maybe with your spouse or your parents. No, I'm telling you there's parking on the left. They said, no, it's on the right, and then they keep circling around. The amount of energy spent on it, the amount of congestion, the pollution aspects of it is absolutely enormous. So it's a huge issue. Now the thing was, I was a senior executive at a company called SAP, which is a big software company for about 10 years. So it's not like I grew up saying I want to be in the parking business. Maybe I did, I just didn't know it. So this is 1935. You recognize the meters? This is when the parking meter was created in 1935. This is today in many places. Okay? It's that same meter, and that's an illustration of that the industry, the parking industry, actually hasn't changed much in the last 30 to 40 years. Now you're starting to see credit card meters, and you can start making mobile payments. So that innovation is now coming in. But honestly, you're still looking for the parking spot exactly the same way you did 30, 40 years ago. You're driving around, you're paying for it the same way. So it seemed like there was this huge opportunity to look at something that hasn't changed, that impacts everybody, and start to rethink it. So we came out and said, look, what are the different stakeholders? Who are the people that are impacted by this problem? So certainly the cities, the universities, the people that manage parking. In Chicago, Boston, New York, San Francisco, there's huge amounts of real estate that are spent on parking. That's all the real estate on the street or in parking garages, massive amounts of real estate. This real estate usually isn't priced appropriately, isn't allocated appropriately. Sometimes people would be willing to pay $3, $4 at a certain time of day per hour to park their car, but because it's 50 cents or 75 cents, it doesn't work. And so we help cities kind of think about what they can do with all this information. We'll talk about the sensors and how we get that piece of the puzzle. So obviously for drivers, big frustration, right? As I told you, that A to B to C story. On that C part, you've got drivers driving around looking for parking. You can be late for an event. You can be late definitely for a football game. It's also an issue for merchants, right? How many times do you kind of think, I'm going to go to this Italian restaurant, I'm going to go into this area, man, parking is such a pain, I'm not going to go there, I'm going to go somewhere else. And as it is, getting merchants, traffic, and customers in is a challenge. If they now have to deal with a situation where the customers cannot easily get to the location, it becomes a big issue. So you've got, in this case, different stakeholders that are massively impacted by this. The cities, universities where they have the issue, the merchants, and certainly the consumers. So what do? We completely kind of reimagine this whole parking scenario. We provide guidance to an open parking spot, and I'm going to show you that live. We work with local merchants to see how you can do electronic validation. You drive into spot 32, you go into your favorite Starbucks, they ask you which spot did you park in, you say 32 and they pay for it. Okay? That's what merchant validation would be. You can start making reservations for parking in garages. You're going to a restaurant, you're going to university, you can go and make an online reservation, you show your smartphone, the gate opens up, you go in, you park your car, and you're done. And of course, mobile payments, the ability to make a mobile payment at a meter even if you're sitting at a restaurant. So it's about completely kind of rethinking that whole experience. So the way we do it is we put these sensors, and that's that little blue thingy-majiggy up there. We put these sensors in the ground, physically actually in the parking spot. It's about this big. And those sensors detect the presence of a car. And they do it through a magnetometer, so they detect the metal content of the car. And then that information goes through a network out to our data center and out to your smartphone, all in about 20 to 30 seconds. Okay? So this is one of those times where I'm going to switch and show you something different. All right, here we go. So we're going to take a little ride down to Los Angeles. And I'm going to show you what that network actually looks like. So we've got these little bumps in the ground, which is what those little spots are. And then we'll go out and we'll put these little repeaters. These go up in a light pole. And these are here. These are also battery operated. Then you've got this one box called a gateway box that detects all that information. And then you've got the link that connects all of this information. So what's actually happening is this. And if you look at it at street level, this is what happens on the street. Okay? So this is a street in Los Angeles. This is showing you exactly what's happening. The sensors are in these parking spots, and actually you can see one sensor here. They send the information to this repeater, which eventually goes to this gateway box and back to your smartphone. So this is a great example of the Internet of Things. It's like a Wi-Fi mesh network, except you can't just log in and start doing your email or look at videos and so on. So this is how you communicate that information out from those parking sensors. Now the thing is, you can start putting other detection devices underneath us as well. You can put in sensors in fire hydrants to detect the water pressure. You can put in pollution sensors. You can put in sensors to detect different kinds of carbon monoxide and gases and so on. So this is the whole kind of Internet of Things as it relates to smart parking and smart cities. So once you do that, what you see is this whole circle, and this is on the parking side, is we're able to take this information from the streets, through the sensors, to your smartphones, out to the city so they can manage this information, out to motorists in the car, and then allowing the cities to use analytics and information. We actually use IBM's applications to do that. So this is the second thing I'm going to show you here. So this is rail. It's online right now. This is actually Fort Lauderdale. So you're seeing this very second the exact number of parking spots open on the streets in Fort Lauderdale this very second. Okay? And you see it's working, so you can have, that's very good. So you'll see here we've got this kind of concept of less than 2, 2+, and 4+, and I'll show that to you when we look at the consumer applications. But this is showing you the number of spots that are open at each of these places, and then the city can do all kinds of analysis. They can look at these spots, how many spaces are occupied at what time of day. They can start changing the pricing. They can start looking at this information in a much more kind of interesting, constructive way. Now, for the consumers, you've got a different piece of the puzzle. So for those of you that have Android or iPhone apps, you can bring this up. This is our Parker app. So this is showing you now the places. So this is all live. These are the places that we are installed in right now. And I've got Los Angeles up and running here. So if I choose LA from here, you'll see what a driver would see in LA at this point. And here we go. So there are, this very second, 1,473 spots available in downtown LA. And this shows you exactly where those spots are. Okay? And the terminology that we use is these three categories: less than 2, 2+, and 4+. So what this means is in certain blocks, there's less than 2 spots open. In other blocks, there's 2+ spots open. In other blocks, there's 4+. So if you go to a block with 2+ or 4+, you're absolutely guaranteed to find parking. We're now working with automotive companies to include this information into in-car navigation. And you also can switch this out and show pricing. And this is interesting. LA is the first city in the world to have dynamic pricing. So you see this number here? So that's $1. That's $3. And this is $4. So within a few blocks, you have very different pricing, and that's per hour. And this is where the information they can use on how many cars are coming in, what's the demand, and then you can use price to make that change and make that determination. So those are some examples of the applications that we use. Now, this is not future stuff, right? This is not something that's coming down the road and so on. We have now 42 customers around the world that are using this. And we'll see, we may be looking at some stuff in Chicago as well. As I said, some examples here. Los Angeles, we're in 9,000 different spaces. We're using Parker. We're using dynamic pricing. We're in New York, in the Bronx, and starting off in that area as well, including using mobile payments. Fort Lauderdale, we just talked about. International, that's becoming very interesting, but again, in Europe, in Latin America, it's a big issue with so much traffic and such less information. Universities. Universities are like small towns. It's always difficult to go find parking there, whether it's on the street, in the garage, and so on. So we've got an increasing number of universities that are using us as well. And we're in the beginnings of the DC metro system, right? You take a car, you try and go and park it at the train station, take your train. If it's difficult, you're going to have a challenge there. And so as you kind of think about all of these pieces, parking is one example where this topic of the Internet of Things can be used to completely rethink an industry that most people completely ignored and didn't think that you could do anything about. It's a $25 billion industry in the US. Everybody has a car, has to park it somewhere. And as you get lower and lower amounts of real estate available to that, you have to use technology. It's an information problem. It's not a problem of the physical infrastructure. The reason you can't find parking usually is not because there isn't parking, it's because you took the wrong turn. Instead of making a left, you should have made a right. And if we can get that information to you, it would be great. What I want to end at, and I'm glad there's a whole bunch of students in the room, is I think the reason I got involved in this as a startup is that we're at a point, especially in this whole topic of cities, and you'll hear it from the other speakers as well, that we have an opportunity to rethink and reinvent our cities. Using technology, using smartphones, use all the things that you're used to using online. And it's a massive opportunity. But you have to start thinking differently about it. You have to assume that whatever you see out there, just because it's there, that doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean you can't change it. So since I'm not that articulate about it, I picked a clip from Steve Jobs that I think sums that up brilliantly, and I'm just going to play that for you.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. That's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.
So with that, I'll stop. I hope you guys think about this, and I hope you use all this massive information that you're getting and this technology that you're surrounded with to change the world. Thank you very much.